Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the NJ1ST podcast. My name is Ryan McDonald. I have another guest joining me today, Fernando Uribe. Thank you for joining me today, Fernando.
Hey Ryan, good to be here. And listen, bro, I gotta tell you, man, your show's great. Love the quality of your guests, the engagement, the interactions, the conversations. The good stuff, brother.
Thank you very much. And yourself putting out content, many videos weekly, maybe twice a week and stuff like that. The consistency is what keeps you up there. And that's what I'm striving for. Did it with the NJ1ST podcast all 2023 and shooting for 2024. So we're going to have a great conversation. Fernando Uribe, he went to Rutgers and so did I, State University of New Jersey. We are Jersey boys, born and raised, right?
That's right. Yep. Rutgers, New Brunswick, Rutgers, Newark grad school. Listen, you want to get me animated and heated? Take me to a Rutgers basketball game or watch it at home, and you'll see me like cursing at the TV. I get really agitated about Rutgers basketball. It's one of my few passions I have about, like as a sports fan. So
interesting. A lot of people don't know. Myself, I went to Rutgers Newark, and I even interned at the ACLU in Newark. They had me pretty early as a libertarian, and then I came out of college and became more of a independent. I've never really called myself a conservative at all, ever. But that's for Rutgers in my past. And me and Fernando were just talking about how they have their vax policy still. I probably would not have been attending Rutgers if they had that vax policy. I didn't get the vax myself. And I remember to dorm in New Jersey, I had to get the tuberculosis vax. And that was an actual vaccine. It was interesting. But I can bet you that I would have probably had to drop out, as a lot of my colleagues did and went to Penn State because they didn't want to take that vax. That's incredible.
It's really egregious. I think President Holloway's been tone deaf on this, and I talked about it last summer when I had State Senator Declan O'Scanlan on, because I know he was one of the few legislators still sort of calling out Rutgers. Right, it was right around early August, a couple of weeks before parents are moving their kids back on the campus, and to think that Rutgers, the state university and woke state in Montclair, as I like to refer to them, are still sort of engaging in these like draconian vax policies. It's ridiculous. And I just think that, 4 years later now, I mean, we're seeing obviously the new data. We're seeing everything that has come out about how disingenuous the federal government was about COVID. The emperor here in New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy, was about vaccinations. And now the fact that Rutgers and Montclair are still being so punitive to not just faculty members, but students, to just try to finish their degrees. I just think it's reprehensible. And again, I think it's a blemish on the state university. Again, as an alumnus who's so proud to say I'm from Rutgers and I wear Rutgers gear all the time. And again, like I said, you might get me pissed off, have me watching Rutgers basketball, and I'll be screaming at the TV. And when I think about what's happened to Rutgers and how woke it's become, it really breaks my heart, Ryan. I got to tell you.
Yeah, it's the longest standing university, I believe, in America. I think since revolutionary times, even. But
before, remember, it started in 1766. It was Queens College, and it was renamed after Colonel Henry Rutgers. And even then, if you remember, during the summer of COVID, I mean, there were far left activists on campus trying to tear down the statue of Colonel Henry Rutgers. And
really,
yeah, I don't know if you remember that story. It was reported extensively. And again, as an alumnus, I was doing Real Talk. During that summer, that's when it premiered with a different news site, Eyes on NJ News. And one of the first stories I talked about was like, listen, I'm an alumnus. Why are we tearing down Colonel Henry Rutgers? Like, okay, he owned slaves. That's unfortunate. Are we going to just tear down the legacy of Colonel Henry Rutgers, who, by the way, again, I'm not trying to teach a history course here, folks, but Colonel Henry Rutgers was instrumental in helping General George Washington defeat the British in the Battle of the Raritan. So as far as I'm concerned, like, Colonel Henry Rutgers carries freaking weight for me. So I get it. He owned slaves. Well, it was 1766. I mean, no offense. I don't know too many people, that were not, again, I'm not condoning it, but I mean, are we not going to just condemn, legendary, iconic historical figures in American history because of that? Like, that's the same nonsense that permeates with tearing down statues, right? And that's not what people like you and me are about.
And that is a good point to make, to say that that's American conservatism right there. That's what a conservative thought is. And later in the show, we're going to talk about conservatism. But great. That was insightful stuff you just said about Rutgers and the general there. That's awesome. We're going to move on to the second question about your forte. the New Jersey political media. Now, myself, I'm in politics. I'm trying to get into media just for the politics aspect, but you yourself are more of a professional in media. I would give you the credit of saying independent, even though you before said you were I News New Jersey and now with Jersey First TV, but you are independent. You do it all yourself. I don't think you have any producers. You're doing everything yourself, all the everything, right? Independent.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, again, and I'm not the most humble guy around, but I mean, I'm humbled with a great staff at Jersey First. I mean, my producers, my producer that helps me greatly every week in terms of scheduling and certainly the graphics that go on the program. I certainly have a great boss in Rosemary Becky, former, if you remember, former U.S. representative candidate. I believe in CD11, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was CD11 or CD7. You'll have to forgive me on that, but Ashley Smith, obviously, also to the executive director there. I mean, it's a great staff to work with, and I mean, I'm fortunate enough where, when I met them back in early January of 2022, it was really after about a year and a half of starting the show. Really, I mean, I started the show on June 1st, 2020, Ryan, right in the middle of the pandemic, and I would never ever give anything positive to say about what the pandemic represented. But what I will say is when it comes to media and production and online television, I would say that, COVID forced us to look at alternatives when it comes to being able to broadcast. Case in point, we're both on StreamYard. Certainly I've used Zoom. There's Cisco. Obviously there are other platforms that enable us to do this show. I mean, again, the convenient component about your show and my show is I don't have to travel to a studio. You don't have to travel anywhere. My guests and your guests don't either. Again, I would say that remote broadcasting, I think, has revolutionized media. It's not sort of the traditional, come to a studio, sit there, get wired up, mic'd up, excuse me. Again, I think that this sort of technology has made it a lot more efficient for people like you and I that are journalists that are looking to get information out, to get content out. And having said that, again, when I first met the hierarchy at Jersey First, I mean, they have been watching me for a while, and they were very honest and said, "Listen, we like what you have to say. I mean, you look good on television. You speak well. You have great content. You're a good interviewer. You're somebody that we like to have on board. I mean, you check up a lot of boxes." And and I felt flattered hearing that. And I said, "Okay, well, listen. I mean, all I'm asking for is just give me creative control here. Give me some autonomy. I promise I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to curse. I've never yet cursed on the air. I've never said anything too bombastic or polarizing per se. But again,
that's what you can come on here for."
I mean, again, I think, listen, I think you and I can shoot the breeze, as they say, and we can have our shows and the way we do them. I think again, they were very happy to give me the freedom that I think that you need when it comes to doing shows like this, right? I mean, again, I've been watching your work. You're doing great stuff. But I think part of the success, right, I think is predicated on having creative freedom. If you don't have that and you feel handcuffed, like you're not going to be the best version of you. Like you're not going to be the best Ryan McDonald you can possibly be if you feel handcuffed. Same thing with me. I'm not going to be the best version of Fernando Uribe if I'm handcuffing myself or if I'm sort of limiting what I'm going to be saying or doing on a program. So again, I think that since January 2022, I've been fortunate. I've been having great guests consistently. The traffic has been good, very good, actually, organic, nothing boosted. I'm not vaccinated, so I don't believe in boosting anything. Okay, so I don't boost episodes. I don't boost me. I think that, again, getting back to the point, it's, Jersey First, I think, has been a great transition for me. And, I work with wonderful people, and I couldn't ask for a better crew on a statewide media site that, again, I think is been rising in popularity. I think we've developed more content. We have different hosts on the channel per se, for very different people, but I think we're all sort of trying to get to the same goals of promoting like conservative ideas, some libertarian ideas, I think commonsensical ideas, which, let's be honest, Ryan, it's missing like in the establishment media.
Right. And I've always said that Bill Spadilla using that moniker, common sense, it's, to get everybody, not left, right, liberal, conservative. It's got to be common sense, got to start from somewhere, from scratch. And I appreciate you sharing that insight for Jersey First. I don't know if you saw, but I wrote a Substack article at the beginning of 2023, basically handing over that Jersey First title to Jersey First TV. They had the apparatus, they had the producers, they had the money. And it was I've watched it happen. I know Rosemary Becky from 2018 when I started NJ1ST. I go up to everybody in public and they ask me if I'm Jersey First. So, you know, they don't know NJ1ST because Jersey First is more formal, and it shows that she did the work. I believe even there was a hiccup in 2020 where she recouped and maybe did a different went a different way, and looks like she was able to recruit some great people like yourself. And I've seen other commentators and journalists. It looks like there's going to be a program going on for 2024, 2025, and longer. That's what we need, because it looks like the New Jersey political media, to me, has been usurped by certain journalists, reporters, political media. And I know you have more opinions on who's a good journalist, who's not a good journalist, because you're in that realm more. I'm in the political realm. I'm not in the journalist realm. So if you could, I want to talk about NJ Globe, because David Wildstein is probably the largest, I'd say, in New Jersey for political media. Is that correct? Yes. And
I mean, I would venture to guess.
Yeah,
I would venture to guess the metrics, I think, are there. I think they probably have the most engagement and the most traffic of a news site, comparatively speaking. I think with, let's say, Insider NJ or NJ Spotlight News or the New Jersey Monitor, I think, and they break more news. I mean, there are some websites that are just publishing press releases, right? And like they're breaking news per se at 3 a.m, which is something I don't do. So,
and I think David Watson even added on some staffers to try and get the breaking news from Congress right up from Washington, D.C., bring it right back to New Jersey. So he, in a sense, is as well trying to expand like Jersey First, you know, trying to provide better content. But I can't help but always find the hiccups. Sometimes a 3-sentence article just to put out for the engagement farm. Sometimes a bias reporting. But I would like, is there anybody else other than New Jersey Globe that you think is a respectable journalist? Because that's your opinion on them, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, for people that watch Real Talk every Monday Night Live at 6 or 7 p.m., depending on, check your local listings, as I tell people. During Final Thoughts, I mean, during that segment, I mean, I oftentimes go after bad journalism. I think people conflate, well, Fernando's a conservative, so he's just going to look at sort of like the liberal establishment media as bad journalism. No, that's not necessarily true. I think my bone to pick with the establishment media, though, Ryan, is that we've had long-standing people that have been in the business. And you can be whatever you want. I mean, again, you want to lean left or right or center. Again, you can lean wherever you want. That's not my issue. My issue is, editorialists like Tom Moran, who, they're editorials. He's not publishing news per se. He's giving opinions. The problem is, I think that very much like the national problem is that New Jersey sort of continues that trend. I mean, the establishment media leans very heavy left. I mean, listen, David Cruz is a guy who grew up in Hudson County. For anyone that doesn't know about David Cruz, he grew up in Hudson County. He was the editor, I believe, of the Hudson Reporter. He worked with great journalists like Al Sullivan, who's my mentor in local media. For anyone that doesn't know about Al Sullivan, I suggest you do a Google search and you'll see what a great reporter he's been for over 40 years. And he moved his way up, obviously. He worked with Michael Aaron, who I would consider to be, Ryan, on the Mount Rushmore of journalism in New Jersey. If you know anything about Michael Aaron, this is a guy who cut his teeth in the business for almost 50 years. And, obviously he is, pulled away from media due to some health issues. And again, I wish him well. I've had the privilege of talking with Michael Aaron, interviewing Michael Aaron, and being on his show, Reporters Roundtable, back when he hosted it. So I think of the world of someone like Michael Aaron, who would interview anybody, left, right. Sure, he'd have some opinions, but he was a good interviewer, and he was a tough but fair interviewer. And I always looked at someone like Michael Aaron as like, I want to be him. Like, I want to aspire to be like Michael Aaron. And I think what we've been seeing, someone like David Cruz, is, again, sort of like just more concerned with identity politics, with issues that don't matter. I mean, people come up to me all the time at events and say, I love that phrase you mentioned, like when, it just seems like the establishment media is more concerned with pronouns than property taxes in New Jersey. And that's true. And I go after them all the time. Tom Moran, David Cruz, Terrence McDonald, Matt Friedman. I mean, all these guys that, again, you can lean whatever you want. But I think that what we're doing, Ryan, like what you and I do here on StreamYard every week with our shows respectively, I think is a new version of media. And I think that, again, these are guys that have cut their teeth in the business for 10, 30, 20, 30 years. From David Cruz, Tom Moran, to others, where Yeah, they graduated college. They got a job at the local newspaper. They, did frontline reporting. That's great. And I'm not trying to diminish that. That's sort of the old school way of journalism. But Ryan, we both know that's not the case anymore. What we
Don't ask
both have
questions.
learned, what we both have learned is that journalism can still be podcasting. What we're doing, talking about
True.
the news. I don't have to listen. I say this all the time to people. Like, one of my very dear friends runs the Hudson County View here in Hudson County, John Highness. It's a great news site. You should check him out whenever you can for Hudson County centric news. But he's publishing news. He has to do that. If he doesn't do that on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis, he's losing metrics, right? Because he's competing against news sites. That's not what I do. That's not what you do, I'm assuming.
No.
I have a show once a week, maybe twice a week, depends on if it's a special edition. But I do a show once a week. I interview people. I think I'm a damn good interviewer. And then I opine about what's going on in New Jersey that doesn't sit well with me. And I think why I go after journalists so hard in New Jersey is because, for years, what we've been supposed to be doing is relying on these people to be honest with us, to have our best intentions on their minds. Like, when it comes to why is New Jersey unaffordable? Why is New Jersey, still suffocating us with taxes? The gas tax is going up. Tolls are going up. It's budget season. The budget keeps, I say this all the time. The budget's getting fatter than the latest Victoria's Secret models that are out there, modeling lingerie. It's crazy. But what bothers me more is they have the audacity to talk about, this is why New Jersey's unaffordable. Ryan, let's be fair. I'm more the conservative than you. I mean, I think you're more libertarian, but it's not people like me and you that are the problem in New Jersey. It's not people like you and me that are in Trenton saying, yeah, you know what? Yeah, the gas tax is there. Why don't we raise it again? Why don't we just, keep spending money we don't have and keep borrowing against, down the line? Why don't we keep doing that? It's not people like you and me that are dooming New Jersey. So I just like to call out bad. That's what I mean by bad journalists. You don't have our best intentions. You're not looking out for us. You're looking out for you and your metrics, which again, I can respect because we know it's a metrics business. Okay. We're not getting clicks and views and engagement. What are we doing here? I get it, but be a little more straightforward about your agenda. See, I'm very transparent. You know where I'm coming from. There's no ambiguity, Ryan, with what I do and what you do per se, right? So again, that's what I like to sort of label as bad journalists. And when I go after people again, and there's tons of them: Max Pizzaro, Bob Hennelly, Jay Lassiter, Alan. I mean, these are guys that just, it's amazing to me what they fixate on, whether it's their usual Trump derangement syndrome or identity politics, or, it's 5 months and 3 weeks and 2 days and 4 hours and 2 minutes and 3 seconds until Pride Month or something like that. It's mind boggling to me. These aren't things they're not important. They're just not. Not because I'm anti-LGBT plus minus whatever. No, it's because I care about real issues. And so do you. I mean, right?
Sure. And we're going to get into more of those issues. Before I leave the New Jersey political media, I'm going to ask one last question on that. But did you see Tucker Carlson's over in Russia right now?
I did see that. I'm not going to lie, man. I'm a little concerned for his safety. I mean, I don't think traveling to Russia is the most desirable thing. And as somebody who, went through his phase of dating Russian women for many, many years, and liking, and listen, they're hot, dude. I mean, I've dated some hot Russian girls. So, I mean, I'm very, very happy with the eye candy that a lot of them have been in my life.
Oh,
but
come on.
no, they have been. No, certainly. But I don't feel safe traveling to Russia. Again, I give Tucker a lot of credit. I don't know what the State Department did for this to be possible. I mean, maybe you have an inside scoop. Well, I mean, I'm just trying to say, I don't think,
you just went to Russia. He was invited. He went. But the reason why he didn't go in 2022, he was supposed to. He was supposed to go to Russia. He was supposed to interview Putin, and he got tracked. He got stopped by the feds, and then he called up a Fed friend of his and said, "Should I just go?" And then they're like, "No, don't do it." So he backed off. He was still at Fox at the time. Okay. Looks like now he's not at Fox. He's already in Russia. He didn't go to Russia before. Now he's already in Russia, and the videos are coming out. He's trying to get that Putin interview, which everyone wants to see. I want to see it. But if you're saying you're fearful of his safety because of his high profile. I could see that, but I think people can
listen. I just think it's dangerous for an American to be traveling to Russia. Period, man. I mean, I think that,
nah.
you know, I'm just concerned for that, and you know, again, I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush here, but I just feel concerned about going to countries like that where, again, as an American, you know, you're kind of standing out, dude. You know, a passport, once it's, you know, scanned, I don't know, dude. Like it just concerns me.
I hear you.
I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, but it's just,
No, I hear you.
For Tucker's sake, like, listen, I think that interview is going to possibly break the internet. I think it might come close to the interview did with Elon Musk. I think it might really do good metrics for him because I think it's going to kind of give a perspective. And it's funny you mentioned about Russian. I've talked about this before, and this might get me into some trouble, but I mean, I'm someone that when it comes to foreign policy, though, Ryan, and again, I'm an old man compared to you. I've lived long enough to see where being an isolationist isn't the worst thing in the world. And, you know, what's going on right now in Russia in their ongoing war with Ukraine, which is really breaking, it's going on 2 years now. And we're sinking billions of dollars into that conflict. And again, like, let Putin do whatever he wants. Okay. You know, Ukraine is not our problem. Ryan, again, you know, when we're seeing again, I live in Hudson County, you know, I can walk 2 blocks. I can look at Manhattan. Okay. I can be in Manhattan in 15 minutes. When I'm hearing that the city of New York is planning on giving credit cards and funds to illegals that are flooding the streets of New York, and other cities are thinking about doing the same thing, like, this is what we're focusing our money on. Like, there aren't veterans and the elderly and children and disabled persons that could rather use that money for instead of sinking up, you know, money into a corrupt regime like Ukraine, which we all know it's corrupt. But for some reason, it's been really politicized, and it's almost become like tribal now. Like, if you're a liberal Democrat, which we would never thought of, that you're so pro Ukraine, yeah, whatever, keep funneling money into that. But if you're conservative like me, and you're like, well, whatever, that's between Russia and Ukraine, let them battle it out, and whoever wins, and that's it. Somehow
and then all of a sudden it flips when it goes to Israel. Yeah, then the liberals don't want it, and then the conservatives always want the Israel. Yeah, it's interesting.
Somehow we're agents of Russia because, we don't care about Ukraine. No offense, Ryan. Like, can we worry about our own borders here and instead of worrying about borders 5,000 miles away? Again, am I missing something here, bro? Like,
nah, we agree on that.
It boggles my mind when I see far left politicians and far left journalists so staunchly defending Ukraine. When, again, you care about borders so much, how about ours? How about the Canadian border?
But then you have the Lindsey Graham's conservatives who are just calling for World War III to protect Israel. So it's definitely the same side, like flip it on the other side for conservatives to Israel.
It's mind-boggling.
Same exact thing.
But I'm curious about Tucker. I'm curious to see what the content will be between him and Putin. What Putin's willing to answer. I mean, listen, Putin's not very trustworthy. I'm not going to sit here and try to paint them as a saint.
KGB.
He's not very trustworthy. I mean, again, this is a former head of the KGB, dude. I mean, if you do any homework, I don't mean you, I mean generically, if you do any homework on Vladimir Putin, I mean, this is not an honorable guy, dude. But that's where I'm saying.
So my last question, and I know we were talking about in regards to the foreign relations there, Tucker Carlson, journalist over in Russia. So finishing up the topic of political media, I will say it right now. I do have a problem with David Wildstein pleading guilty to a civil rights violation, being entangled with Bridgegate, but being the guy who is the mediator in debates for high elected offices for all these debates. And what I'm saying is he's the only one who is afforded. Matt Rooney sometimes, but David Wildstein, it's always him. Everybody goes to him. That's because both candidates choose. It's not because they could easily go somewhere else. I think someone like yourself would be in a position to interview or do debates between high level, even Senate positions, congressional positions. I hope would be open to doing that if people asked you.
Well, I mean, listen, it's not for lack of trying. I mean, I moderated plenty of debates in 2022 with some with some congressional candidates. I did a couple. I did a couple candidates forums up in CD5, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. I remember. I believe also in CD11. It was, listen, I think one of the challenges that I see with Jersey First is the idea that because we're seen more as a conservative news site or conservative opinion news site, I think that, some established politicians do shy away. I mean, listen, I'll tell you a funny story. I mean, one of the reasons the governor won't come on my show is, and I happen to know people, and again, I'm not trying to do like a Stephen A. Smith, oh, this guy's a friend of mine, but I just met him 5 minutes ago. Like, I legitimately have friends in Trenton that have worked in the governor's office and have told me,
They
like,
could ask.
yeah, who would be like, hey, listen, I want to try to get the governor on. I'll be respectful. I'll be courteous. I'll be tough, but I'll be fair.
What do they say?
And I'll remember like two people, and again, I won't mention their names, but two people that I know that worked in the governor's office directly were like, yeah, I'm not really down with that Cuban Tucker guy. And,
Cuban Tucker, that's good.
Yeah. And I was like, first of all, I was like, I'd burn this jacket if I could have Tucker's hair. Okay. First of all, I'm not really, I don't have a nice head of hair like you do, bro. So, you know what I'm saying? So like for me, when I hear Cuban Tucker, I'd give anything to have his hair. Are you kidding me? But when I heard that, it was already sort of like, that's the perception that existed. And I think that, that's been the challenge. Now, to your point about David Wallstein, I'll say this. I mean, I'm good friends with David. We talk off the air often, and he's been a regular on my program where we've been able to like dissect, data and candidates and campaigns. And listen, what I will say is I think that, and I've asked David, I think if you watched the last episode with him earlier this year, in January, last month, as a matter, it actually was the first episode of the year on January 2nd. He was pretty contrite, I think, about looking back. I said, listen, it's been 10 years now. We look back, obviously your former friend Christopher is, still trying to run for president. And, I think he took it tongue in cheek. I think he had a good sense of humor about it. I think 10 years later, I think is a long time for anybody to sort of think about things that they've done. And I'll take David at his word. I'll take David. I think what David's tried to do in 10 years, I think, is sort of distance himself from that, Ryan, to be fair. And again, my point of contention, I think, is I tend not to be harsh on people like David or others, whether right or left journalists that have some baggage on them, because at the end of the day, like, again, I don't want to sound sanctimonious here, but it just seems like, listen, we're all humans. We're going to F up at some point in our life, sometimes more serious than others. I get it. 10 years have passed since that happened. I think we've learned a lot about what Bridgegate was. I think we saw a lot of fall people, right? Bill Baroni. I misplaced the name for the woman. It'll come to me.
Kelly something.
Not Kellyanne Conway. That was Trump's. Kelly something. Bridget Kelly.
Kelly. Yeah,
I think it was Bridget Kelly, right? Yeah.
When he got the fall, took the fall.
Yeah, and I look back and think about how upside down Bill Baroni's life was turned upside down, and Bridget Kelly's life was turned upside down. And again, like, I think there was never any accountability by Chris Christie, and I don't think we'll ever get that. I think it was great to see their convictions overturned by the Supreme Court when it comes to Baroni and Bridget Kelly. Obviously David, obviously had his conviction expunged. Or again, you'll have to correct me. I don't recall off the top of my head the language about it, but I think that 10 years passed. I think at least the vibe I got from interviewing, and folks, again, you can watch the episode. You don't take my word for it. You can watch it. It's a January 2nd episode. I think he showed contrition that where he's like, he learned from it. I think he's tried to move on from that. I think he's been trying to, publish news in a way that makes him probably the most viewed site in the state when it comes to like breaking news. Again, like when I wake up at 6, take a leak and go back to bed, like I'll just happen to check Twitter for 2 minutes. There's something being published at 4 a.m. So it's like, it's hard to match that work ethic. And I think a lot of news sites in New Jersey struggle with that when it comes to David, because he's, to your point, he has a good, Joey Fox, the rest of the good staff. I mean, they're really, really, on point with breaking news. Now, to what you were referencing about how he has this sort of distinct advantage with like moderating debates and candidate forums. I think Sunday night he did a meet the candidates or conversation with the candidates with Andy Kim. Listen, this is a guy whose Rolodex is extensive, and I think that he's going to have that upper hand, I think, with anybody when it comes to getting scoops and getting, listen, I'm pretty sure he can contact the governor, any of the governors on a
He's,
whim. I think he
he's
can
been
contact.
he's been in politics before the journalism. He's been in politics since he was my
Yeah,
age, even.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah. No,
definitely has his contacts all around the state. And I am biased. If anyone ever follows me on any social media, I'm definitely biased towards him. But also his, who he surrounds him. Micah Rasmussen of Rebovich Institute. These are people who act in bad faith. Just last year, he had to apologize to me on behalf of Rider University for throwing me out of a public event. And these are people who he'll have on and allow them to interview these candidates and at a high level. And, they get all the fame and accolade, and they're not really good people, if you ask me. Because just like I'm going to go and leave it there, we're going to talk about the New Jersey U.S. Senate primary. I'm involved in that, and I see the same thing as I did in 2022, as I did with 2020. Actually, I'm sorry, I have to go back. David Wildstein still has the campaign ads for Phil Murphy of 2021 and getting reelected. David Wildstein posts the campaign ads for John Bramnick, the worst people, the worst leaders, the reason that we are in what we are in New Jersey. I hope he's getting paid. I hope he just doesn't he's posting that because he agrees with them. I hope he's at least getting paid.
Well, Ryan, I mean, listen, as someone that gets advertising dollars from different sponsors and not necessarily campaigns, but I would say like different sponsors, I would say that, again, I don't run a news site the way I would say David Wildstein does or John Hines does with the Hudson County View or Terrence McDonald does with the New Jersey Monitor. Again, I don't know what the business setup is for those as an LLC.
True.
But what I will say is that it wouldn't shock me. Like, case in point, I'll keep it sort of local here.
Yeah.
I know for a fact here in Hudson County, the Hudson County View, if you ever look at their website, hudsoncountyview.com, again, my good friend, the editor, John Hines, when you look at the news site, I mean, there are paid political ads during campaign season. I don't take it as, well, John is endorsing so-and-so and so-and-so. I think that they're just buying airtime. I think they're buying URL space. And I think that's how I look at, again, I understand
would you let Bob Hugan put it on if he offered you so much money?
Well, I will say this. I personally would not let Bob Hugan and the NJGOP as a political party per se, I think, advertise on Real Talk. But I mean, listen, I mean, there are municipalities that pay me money to be sponsors for my podcast. Like those that exists. One thing is, again, at a municipal level, municipal government, would I allow campaigns per se? I've never done that, Ryan. Again, but I'm not going to sit here and kill John Hines or Terrence McDonald or NorthJersey.com, even though I can't stand Chucky, Charles Style. I know he's not the editor, but the point is, I think that when it comes to a news site, I don't know the fundamentals when it comes to what the business model is, but it wouldn't shock me when people like John Bramnick, for example, are looking to, have an add-on. I mean, to be fair, you want to put it on a space that gets the most eyes, and it's not going to be Insider NJ. It's not going to be New Jersey Monitor. It's probably going to be the Globe, probably Politico. Probably.
He doesn't run other people's. He only runs specific, high-profile, corrupt individuals. But we'll leave it there. How about that? We don't have to beat up that any longer.
Again, I'm not trying to make an excuse for anybody. I'm just trying to sort of think out loud about the way the business model is.
I
think when it comes to news sites, they're going to publish content. Now, again, if you come up to me, again, I've never done that. Like, I've never had a campaign come up to me per se and tell me, hey, Fernando, what's your ad space like? I'm like, nothing, because I don't take ads for political candidates. I'll take ads for like products, which I have, and municipalities and stuff like that. But I personally choose not to post political ads. Like I'm probably I'm like 2 steps shy from getting John Bramnick to block me, because I've been going after John too. So but I don't anticipate John reaching out to me. I mean, my metrics are fine. I think they're okay. They're good. But if he were to reach out to me, I think I would politely tell John Bramnick, I'm like, listen, that's not what I do. That's not what Jersey First does. That's not what my show does. Now, again, if somebody else, I'll be fair, if somebody else on Jersey First wanted to do that on their show, I mean, that's on them. I'm not going to, I just choose not to do it, though.
Great. And I really do appreciate the free speech platform. You're coming on here and speaking openly. A lot of people should take that and say how much of a man Fernando Uribe is, not like the other people that I'm describing, people who I think are in the back rooms doing deals. He's coming on and he wants to speak with me. I really do appreciate that.
No, I appreciate, and one thing about the debates thing is just, it's a really big mountain to climb, because I know that when I've reached out to candidates, like I've reached out to Andy Kim's candidacy. Listen, I'll be very fair. I don't care for Tammy Murphy. I have zero interest in interviewing Tammy Murphy. I think I'd rather interview Andy Kim. I've been trying to interview Bob Menendez. He's a family friend. I know him personally. I'd like to get him on because it'd be a great scoop. I'd like to get other people on. But again, I think it's that challenge, I think, as a news site that kind of boxes you into a corner where, again, if Jersey First is conservative, like case in point, Sue Altman's I know Sue personally. I like her. She's a nice lady. I've always had great conversation with her at the League of Municipalities, but there isn't one policy position that she takes that I like. I'll interview her. I've tried reaching out, but it's clear that her inner circle doesn't want me talking to her, and fine.
It's that. Yeah, exactly that.
Okay. Understand that if you want to win in CD7, you just can't appeal to the woke crowd. You can't appeal to the defund the police crowd or to the pronoun police. You have to appeal to like maybe conservatives like me or independents like you that maybe they're on the fence in CD7. Maybe they're not in love with Tom Kaine, but they look at someone like Sue Altman and like, I don't know about Sue Altman either. It's like, I think you're cutting your nose to spite your face if you're Sue Altman, like in a race like that, where you should be talking to all media.
Good point. Good point. And we'll go straight into we're going good on time. If you want to wrap up, just let me know. But
no, let's keep going. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
we'll go straight into the Senate primary and let's talk about the Democrats first. And I know you can definitely speak on that, but a couple weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago, you had a thought, some wind in the air, some politicians, some politicos telling you that maybe Tammy Murphy's whole plan, the whole Murphy's plan was they're going to get all these endorsements, they're going to get all this support, and then just endorse Menendez in the end. Do you still think that's the play, or do you think Tammy's going for it, Menendez is out, and Andy Kim is going to try and come through from behind?
Well, I'm going to give you a completely different dichotomy here, and get ready for this one, all right? So buckle up, folks. And I talked about this again when I had other guests on early this year. Certainly, the judge has denied Senator Menendez's delay for the trial, so it should start in early May. I think it's about ready to start about approximately 1 month before the primary. And Senator Menendez has not made any announcements. He's obviously, him and his legal team have been working on his defense. There's millions of pages of discovery, which I can't even imagine, like having to read millions of pages of discovery. Like that's just, never mind the billable hours. I'm just thinking to myself, I'll get a migraine. I mean, there isn't enough Red Bull, I think, at Walmart to stock up on to read all that stuff. Having said that, the senator hasn't made any news about whether or not he's going to run again. I think obviously the trial starts in May. It's not going to be finished by primary day. I'm sure it'll drag out throughout the rest of the summer. I get a sense that, listen, Ryan, all it takes is one juror. And I understand that it looks incriminating for Senator Menendez as it did back in 2016 and going into 2017. I understand all that. All it takes is one juror to believe, and let's be fair, to believe that the federal government, that the FBI, and that the U.S. attorneys have an agenda and that they're not acting in good faith. Where have we heard that before? So would it shock me if one juror doesn't buy what the U.S. attorney's office is peddling? It wouldn't shock me. And if he gets another hung jury, now again, it's two separate trials. His wife has one and he has one. But let's just focus on Menendez.
Right.
If he gets either acquitted or there's a hung jury, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, though, Ryan, that he runs as an independent. Again, he's not going to win the primary, right? A lot of the county lines have endorsed Tammy Murphy. Andy Kim has had some endorsements, right? Like, I think College Democrats, I think some other South Jersey Democrats. I think right now Tammy Murphy's kind of racking up a lot of the endorsements. Yes. Let's be fair. In a year where there's a lot of sort of anti-Democrat hostility, and again, the Republicans, again, no jab against your guy Greg Melee, but we don't know who the Republicans are going to run.
Right.
We think that based on that, if you're Bob Menendez and you get a hung jury going into the end of the summer, early fall, would it be out of the realm of possibility that he would say, well, let me just run as an independent? Because guess what? In a 3-person race, it might split the vote up. And again, we don't know.
Okay.
We don't know who the Democrat is going to be. I think, listen, that fairly ridiculous university poll that came out last week, I get that if you're Andy Kim right now, you want to be up 12 and not down 12. I get that.
Yeah.
I think what should concern Andy Kim and concern Tammy Murphy too is that there's a large portion of sort of the sample size that still didn't know where they stood on endorsing or voting for someone. And again, I mean, I looked at some data where like I think some respondents didn't even know there was an election this year, which I think is asinine to me to think that you're that out of touch with politics. But again, I hate people like that. But the point is that I think that if you're Andy Kim, yeah, you feel good right now. You can fundraise on that 12-point lead. But if it's Tammy Murphy somehow winning the primary, and I don't know who the Republican's going to be. It might be Greg Melee. It might be Alex Sadan. I don't know. Who knows? The point is that if that's the candidate list, would it really be unrealistic? If, again, I'm Cuban, so I know a little something about being a fighter and kind of being, never say quit and just keep going at it. Would it really shock you if Bob Menendez ran as an independent? And if that's the case, you don't need 50-some% to win that, dude. So it wouldn't shock me if again, a lot of variables have to sort of fall into place for him. Again, the trial has to end at some point before the fall. It might take the whole summer, but if it's another hung jury and he decides to run as an independent, he can still raise money. He still has some loyalists, I think, within the party apparatus, though, Ryan, that if it's 3 people and he's one of them, his name recognition goes a long way. And if it's Tammy Murphy,
right?
If it's Tammy Murphy with a vastly unpopular president at the top of the ticket, if you're Bob Menendez, don't count it out. That's all I'm saying. And people, when I've explained this theory to them, they're like, "Oh, damn, okay." I said, "Well, again, a lot of things have to fall into place, but would it really shock you?"
Right. RFK Jr. is doing it. Why wouldn't other state, Arizona, they had someone who won and then went independent and changed up the whole political scene over there. But yeah, I'll leave that there with the Democrats because what you just said was basically the logical side of it. My opinions on the Democrats and Andy Kim, Tammy Murphy really doesn't matter. I'm not going to be voting for them. And people also probably already made up their decision. I keep trying to tell people Andy Kim said he wasn't going to vote for Nancy Pelosi and then he voted for it. People don't care. They don't care. They don't care that he didn't do that.
Again, I mean, I don't like a single policy position that Andy Kim's ever taken. It seems like a nice guy. I happened to meet him a few years ago. He was a gentleman to me, but I mean, that's not like, I'm not going to like look past that and be like, oh yeah, I've seen your voting record. I'm not really a fan of it. And I get it. He can be all cute and pick up trash, in Washington after
January 6th.
Yeah. The guided tour there, in 2021, but
the guided tour,
but I just think it's something that I understand what Andy Kim represents. I think it represents this, hey, we don't just want a coronation. I've said this to other people on my show. Like, didn't we fight a revolution against the monarchy of England 247 years ago to make sure that we were like freed from a monarchy?
Yeah.
Now somehow in New Jersey, like it's okay to live under a monarchy. Like, didn't we spill blood to rid ourselves of King George, man? And now all of a sudden, like King Phil and the Queen somehow are, it just seems like there's nothing wrong with this attempted coronation. And I just find it funny that, again, going back to the journalist I just mentioned, Tom Moran has his little, I talked about this last week in my monologue, like Tom Moran is so full of it when he wants to be sanctimonious about Tammy Murphy and the Murphys. Mind you, this is a guy who endorsed Phil Murphy twice. Yes, he'll say that he did it reluctantly. He wasn't a fan of Phil Murphy, but when Phil Murphy was locking down the state, killing businesses, killing the economy, doing everything else, not a peep from Tom Moran, right? When it came to, David Cruz, Terrence McDonald, Matt Friedman, Max Pizarro, these are all like liberal establishment media guys who, for the longest time, could have called out everything Phil Murphy was doing wrong and chose not to. But now all of a sudden you want to, oh, well, let me just voice some opposition to what Phil Murphy's doing. Nah, it's too late, fellas. I'm sorry. I'm not buying it. And I think that, again, that's part of my disdain for the establishment media. It's like you could have had a chance to neutralize Phil Murphy a long time ago. And now you didn't do that. And now you're basically letting him have his wife coronated. And again, I think Andy Kim is the only thing that stands really in his way from doing that. Again, I don't know who the Republican candidate is. There's a good crop of candidates right now. Again, Greg Melee. I believe some other candidates have announced. We'll see.
We'll get into that right now. The one thing that I will give Andy Kim credit for, it's kind of half-hearted, is the county ballot line. Him and the progressive Democrats, the Marxists, they're taking on the county ballot line, the Good Government Coalition, elections or a fair ballot initiative. I've been paying attention to it. I even made a video recording with John Kirpus, a municipal chair, and he tried to go on the lawsuit with them against the county ballot line. They don't want it. They just want the Democrats with them. And that's basically what I'm trying to say, is that they are doing it out of bad faith. They are going to use the county ballot line at the same time as saying that they're against it. And on top of that, they're against the county ballot line just because of it not being diverse. There's too many white, straight men on. That's literally what they say, rather than it being a corrupt, New Jersey is the only state in America that has this county ballot line. They would go right to identity politics, as you and everybody else knows. But let's talk about the county ballot line in the Republican Party. Everyone knows I'm working, and if they don't, I'm working with Greg Mealy for U.S. Senate. We're in the primary, the June 4th, 2024 primary is going to happen. And Christine Glassner is that pick. Mike Testa has a candidate down south, Curtis Bashaw. He's trying to make that his pick. Me and Fernando talked about the great success that Mike Testa down in Cumberland County has had. So, hey, why not him run a candidate? You know, he's the chairman of that committee, that campaign for Curtis Bashaw. But Bob Hugin, Jack Chiarelli, Tom Kane, Jose Arango, everybody has already come out and said Christine Glassner is the person. Laura Ali, they all got it. So she's probably going to get the line. I've read all the bylaws in NJGOP counties, basically 17 counties. The conventions are just, come on by, try out. But there are like 3 or 4 counties, Atlantic, Monmouth, Morris, and maybe one other, where there's a whole special sheet. You have to get 15 county committee member signatures in addition to the regular. They make you jump through hoops, and they don't let you know about anything. It's just as corrupt as I'm sure the Democrat side is. So I would like your opinion on the county ballot line.
Well, a couple of things. I remember back in March of 2022, I went to Morris County for their convention. And I know it was just, again, I just come on board with Jersey First. And
cool.
They had asked me to, hey, listen, do you want to do your show live from the Morris County convention? And I said, cool. And I was interviewing candidates all night long. Again, if you check out their website, you'll see that it was literally like a 6-hour event. Like literally, we were live streaming during the convention, and even yet, still, like nothing got settled that night. A lot of races weren't settled. And I looked at the Morris County convention as a bit of like hoopla. There was a lot of bedlam there. I mean, I remember arriving, I think, a little before 4:30. Our technical team was there setting up the live stream, the MacBook, all the cameras, everything, the lighting, making sure the mics worked, because I was bringing people, again, as I was in front of the camera reporting live, I was just bringing candidates. If I saw someone, hey, I just pulled them into the shot I was interviewing. They're live, on the premises. And I just looked at that entire arrangement as like very dysfunctional. I mean, there were tables all around, huge sort of auditorium or multi-purpose room. I don't remember exactly the location. It was a bit of a hike. I remember I'll never forget this. It was a Friday night at 6:00.
They're making it 5 p.m. this time.
Yeah. And I remember, I live in Hudson County. I was like, let me look at the GPS. Let me see how long it's going to take me to get there. And literally it was like, without traffic, it was like an hour 15. And I said, let me allot myself enough time to leave, Hudson County, and drive out there on 80 and get to 24, whatever. I forget what the directions were. But the point was that, I mean, it literally took me like an hour and 40 minutes to get there. And It started at 6. It didn't really start at 6. It didn't really even start at like 7:15.
Okay.
And then as you got there, I mean, the open bar was nice, but I was working. So if I had one drink, I mean, that was a lot. And I was like pissed. I was like, damn, man, like, who likes to miss an open bar? But I remember during the multipurpose room, I mean, there were so many different tables of candidates from, Phil Rizzo to other people, right? Like, and legislative candidates and congressional candidates and this and that. And I just, I remember Laura Ali, the Morris County chair, giving speeches during the evening and other people. I just found that to be so dysfunctional. And listen, conventions are important. I think that they give an opportunity for candidates to present their case to voters and to primary voters specifically. I just wish it was better organized. But I mean, again, who am I? I mean, I've organized, I do fundraisers and I organize parties. It's very different than organizing, a county convention during, election season. I just think that it's difficult, to your point. I wasn't aware about Christine Glasner being I guess, is she the official NJGOP pick? Has that been announced? I haven't seen it anywhere.
Well, not the official, but for instance, Morris GOP, Laura Ali have endorsed her. Jack Chitterelli at the League of Municipalities endorsed her right away. And other chairs have come out and endorsed her when chairs aren't even supposed to make endorsements. But that's the reason why I'm saying, and other people are saying, that she's the pick. Tom Kean Jr., she's got the Trump husband. She's going to be the pick, but that's the county ballot line, the pick for the county ballot line. Well, whether or not she will win the primary is up to the voters. Yes.
I mean, listen, I've had the pleasure of meeting Greg Mealy. Nice guy. Certainly, he's a guy who's been going around to events, town halls. I mean, he's been doing the work. He's been going around doing the work, going to events, familiarizing himself with organizations, with primary voters. I give him all that credit. Again, you're not obligated to disclose the number to me. I don't know how he's done fundraising wise. I don't know how Mike Testa's guy has been doing fundraising wise. I don't know how Christine Glasner has been doing fundraising wise. What I will say though, and see, again, this is my concern. Okay. My concern is that Bob Hugin, he's been taking a lot of L's. And again, and I've been openly critical of Bob. And not because, someone says, Fernando just want the last job I want on this earth is to be NJGOP chair. Okay, so let me put that out there. When I go after Bob Hugin and the apparatus of the NJGOP, it's not because I'm doing it out of malice, though, Ryan. I'm doing it because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like, again, I earlier tonight on Real Talk, I interviewed Parsippany Councilman Justin Musella. I think an up-and-coming GOP guy. I think this is a guy you want to keep an eye on in GOP politics for years to come, especially in that part of Morris County. And we talked about, like, hey, 2021, we saw great strides. We saw 8 assembly seats get seized by Republicans. We saw, arguably in my adult life, the biggest political upset legislatively with Steve Sweeney getting ousted by Ed Durr. And, Republicans were tribal. They were fickle. And because Jack Chitterelli didn't check off every box, we got another term of the emperor. And again, I was the only guy in media. Again, folks, you can look this up. It's there. The receipts are there. I called that race 2 or 3 points. And people were like, you're out of your mind. I said, the emperor is vastly unpopular in multiple parts of the state. Republicans need to come out and vote. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, I think only 45% of registered Republicans came out to vote. And again, if Democrats don't have that problem, okay? Democrats may not like someone, but if there's a D next to their name, it's like, it's like seals, fish, and they're there and they're pressing that lever. Republicans get a lot more tribal. Well, Jack wasn't this, and Jack knows this because I've been very upfront with him and transparent. There were a lot of things that were uninspiring about his candidacy. There are still things that are uninspiring about his candidacy, possibly if he runs in 2025. Like, he knows this. I'm not being, Fernando's being, no, I've said this on record. He knows this. Okay, he's called it to my attention. My issue is that, again, Republicans don't seem to rally behind people. And Republican voters get way too fickle and way too tribal. Whoever the Republican nominee is for the U.S. Senate coming up after June 4th, excuse me, that's who Republicans have to rally behind. because it's Tammy Murphy or Andy Kim. I mean, I think we can make, if it's Tammy Murphy, I think we can make the case this is a winnable seat for Republicans because Tammy Murphy and what the Murphys are attempting to do, it's borderline coronation stuff. This is stuff we got away from. This isn't Pledge Week at the fraternity on Frat Row, dude, at Rutgers in New Brunswick. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not Pledge Week. Okay, there's not some coronation that we're expecting. I think that Republicans have a chance to make this a very competitive race for this seat. But again, if the NJGOP doesn't rally behind a strong candidate, and if Republicans stop being fickle, oh, well, who is this person? Get to know the person. Read up. Again, whether it's Greg Mealy, whether it's Christine Glasser. Listen, I personally like Alex Zidane. I've known him. He's a nice guy. I don't know what he's doing right now because if he's announced, it's February 5th. What's going on? Who's announcing? I don't know. But I think the NJGOP has to get their act together. And to your point about county conventions, like, it's always in disarray, Ryan. And that's what bothers me the most.
And this will be a good segue to our last question. But to your point and exactly what you were saying, 40% voted in that 2021 election. I know by name plenty of people who told me they voted for Rizzo, they voted for someone in the primary, and they did not vote Jack in 2021. To me, that's okay, but that's why you lost. That's why Murphy was elected. You know, if you're a Republican, I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. I vote Republican now. But if you are a Republican member, if you are involved in the Republican Party, you should probably take Thomas Massey Jr.'s advice. You vote for the person in the primary, and you vote for the party in the general. Again, and that seems like pretty good advice. Yeah.
Again, Ryan, Democrats follow that to the T.
Okay.
They follow that to the T. I don't understand why Republicans, struggle with this. And let me just compound this other problem too.
Okay.
Republicans have to get a little more proactive about vote by mail. Bro, it's not going anywhere. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't know what to say about it. Like, it's not going anywhere. And until Republicans get a little more efficient with it, until they get better, mark my words, when Republicans get really efficient at vote by mail and it starts tilting a little bit in their direction, you can mark my words, bro. Democrats in Trenton are going to find an excuse to be like, oh, wait a second, I think we need to revisit vote by mail because it works so excessively in the advantage of Democrats. I think Republicans, listen, I like to go vote on election day. I personally like to go vote on election day. However, early voting and all this, I understand you want to make voting more accessible, but at the end of the day, Republicans are still lagging behind in vote by mail. If they don't get more proficient at it, if they don't get more proactive, they're not going to win a statewide race, Ryan. And I wish that the NJGOP would understand that. I don't know how many more losses in November do they need to understand that vote by mail has been their Achilles heel. They need to remedy it and overcome it. It boggles my mind.
And the vote by mail thing, we could talk on a whole nother episode about that because there's a lot there. But to extend what we were just talking about with 2021, nobody voted for Jack in the general. In 2023, 30% of Republicans voted in the general. 20% of Republicans voted in the primary. Only 20%. So this is the exact issue that you're talking about. And I do really appreciate the words that you just said. For viewers, you should take that to heart. What he said is actually authentic and real. So my question for you is, because if they are losing, like you were saying, it's either the message or the voters aren't getting behind the candidate. It could be both. Just recently, Jack Chitterelli basically said what the mission is. Same thing as Bob Hugin, for the last couple of years, even Tom Kean are forming the narrative as pro-choice Republicans. They call themselves conservatives. They don't call themselves liberals, but they are using pro-choice as a narrative because, well, you're losing the narrative battle to the Democrats in every which way. They have it all the way up to 9 months abortion. Well, the Democrats still win that narrative because they say that there's a 0.01% of abortions that occur in the 9 months. So there's these narratives that are going on, and the Republicans, I'm seeing them, are trying to play ball. which is okay. I'm seeing their strategy. They're being pro-choice, but this invokes the question. And now we are able to ask these Republicans, because they've been quiet for so long, where does life begin? And we had Ed Durr sponsor that heartbeat bill. This is what Republicans all around the country are proposing to their states now that Roe versus Wade has sent it back to the states, whether or not life begins at 9 months, 14 months, 24 months, conception. There's actually some states that are saying conception and making it criminal to abort. I believe like Oklahoma was trying this. I don't know if it passed, but New Jersey's not one of those states. I understand this. New Jersey has a lot of voters who don't believe that that actually New Jersey has a lot of voters that believe abortion is a right, and I don't believe that. I believe in a heartbeat. I think that's a good starting point.
Sure.
I think a lot more Republicans are now being forced to speak that way too, because in a sense, it's not even conservative in that sense. It's like science and liberal, the heartbeat is a good starting point. So I would just like, cause you call yourself pro-choice, no?
Well, I mean, listen, we've had these conversations off the air, and I know that we sort of differ on this vastly. I would say this. I would say that as someone who, has had to pay for abortions in his adult life, and obviously buying Plan Bs over the years and stuff like that, I would say that, I was happy when Roe was struck down and it was handed down to the states. Because again, I'm all about the 10th Amendment. I'm all about states' rights, and however states want to legislate, I'm all about that. Having said that, it's interesting how every election cycle, especially in New Jersey, abortion gets weaponized, and it's about reproductive justice and all that. And what I would say is, I think that in a state like New Jersey that is not as conservative, I think by and large as, let's say, Kentucky or Tennessee or Texas or the Carolinas or Georgia, what I would say is I think that Republicans have a chance to maybe try to meet people in the middle. I think, again, listen, I'm about winning elections, about trying to win the narrative. And I think that what we've seen in some states is when you want to be, I don't want to use the word draconian, but if you want to just start putting parameters about bans at certain weeks and everything else, again, I'm all for whatever Florida wants to do. God bless them. I'm never going to criticize a state for however they want to manage or codify how they look at terminating a pregnancy. I'm never going to say that. I'm never going to say that about states that are, I think, a lot more conservative than New Jersey. Having said that, in New Jersey, what bothers me, again, is just Republicans and have allowed, the Democrats, the far left Democrats, and again, the establishment media is guilty too, because they enable this. They seem to weaponize, abortion every election cycle to say, well, it's, and here in New Jersey, to your point, yeah, you can terminate a pregnancy up until birth. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm sure that there are plenty of pregnancies that are being terminated at birth, right? Healthy babies. And our tax dollars are subsidizing Planned Parenthood, all these clinics, right? And I find it highly insulting. And I think women should be insulted too, that this keeps getting weaponized every election cycle. And I think that this year, certainly at the top of the ticket, the presidential race, Senate races, House races, I think are all going to be sort of centered around, well, what about, I hate to use the word choice. I prefer to sort of talk about I guess just reproductive issues. I guess, yeah, I think that's, that's a way to, I think that's a better way, more intellectually honest way to sort of attack this issue, is to just say, hey, where are you on the reproductive discussion? And as opposed to choice and this, and I hate these sort of key code words that are meant to trigger people. What I would just say is that, listen, as someone who, I mean, I don't want to get too graphic here, but as someone who has seen abortions performed, it's not a nice procedure. It's certainly not for the faint of heart. It's not something that you ever applaud for. What I would say is that I think that if you're trying to win over independent voters, though, Ryan, I think it's a bad pill to swallow. But I think that trying to meet in the middle and say, listen, I think you have to have some, not, I want to say flexibility, but if states like Texas and Alabama are doing whatever they're doing, God bless them. That's on them. I won't criticize it. But here in New Jersey, if conservatives want to try to win over independents, I think it's just more about well, okay, it's codifying the state law. Can we try to reverse it back and not have it up until birth? Can we have some other parameters? Maybe. Again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of what will it take to win elections from? What's it going to take to win over? Because at the end of the day, yes, today I think Matt Rooney published something that there were like 8,000 new registered Republican voters. That's great. But at the end of the day, like independents like you or I, we make up the majority of the electorate. Mm-hmm. So it's independents that decide elections. Yeah, Democrats have an advantage to some extent. Yeah, the lead is being shaved down in terms of registration. But it's people like you and me that decide elections. What's going to be amicable to someone like you or I that's going to say, well, okay, well, on an issue like reproduction and reproductive, discussions or reproductive conflict, or whatever you want to call it, what's going to make us say, well, you know what? We're not going to side with the left. We're not going to side with Democrats. Can Republicans be reasonable? Can Republicans be maybe just more in the middle? And I think that's how you can win over people, Ryan. Again, I'm about winning elections. I get the philosophical debate that you're having and that you want to have. I get that. I respect that. It's fine. But I'm looking at it more as like, I want to win elections. And you're not going to win elections by always acquiescing to Democrats and the left and saying, well, yeah, it's codified, but we could reduce it, or we could cut back on the amount of weeks, and we could be reasonable. I don't know if there's an easy answer though, Ryan, to be very honest. I get what you're saying about how to define conception and how we define life. But I think that there's also this premise of like, well, what's it going to take to win over people this November? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I care about. I know it sounds very absolutist.
No.
But again, I want a red White House. I want a red Senate. I want a red House. But again, that's me.
Okay, great. That's fine. And I really appreciate, I think I can't say it enough, that you come on and speak publicly. A lot of these conversations, I had one last night, happens, in the private, because these are hard conversations, especially to let other people know your opinion when it comes to these things. And just for viewers and yourself, I believe the Democrats, Andy Kim, if he wins, right? Tammy Murphy, even if she wins, but also Sue Altman, all the Democrats, I believe Bill Pascrell Jr., they're pushing for federal legislation for abortion. So it's against what you were saying. You like the states' rights. They say, no states' rights. We want all of America to codify abortion. They want that to be in the Constitution. So that is.
But isn't it funny how the left, like the people you just listed, isn't it funny when they like the Constitution and states' rights and the 10th Amendment or the Second Amendment or the Fourth Amendment or the First Amendment? Like it's rich to me that the people you just named want to be so sanctimonious about, well, forget about states' rights. Like, they don't know what they're doing. We need to do it federally. Like, that's the whole, again, people are lawyers.
I go back and forth. Yeah, true.
Did you fail constitutional law when you took it in law school? Like, because that's exactly the premise the founders had in creating the 10th Amendment. They didn't want an all-encompassing, powerful federal government. They wanted the states to have autonomy. So now when I hear people like this screaming about, well, the states don't know what they're doing. No, when you don't like a decision, yeah, that's when the states don't know what they're doing. That's when, the federal government has to step in because you don't know what you're doing. I think it's pretty rich when I hear people like that talking about, again, it just reminds, I'm like, you must have slept through con law. You must have slept through it because you're not practicing what you're preaching. You know what I'm saying?
And we're going to, yeah, I do actually. And we're going to finish up on the reproductive and abortion talk right there. But are you familiar with Tim Pool? Timcast, the podcaster, Tim Pool?
I'm familiar with him. I have not listened to anything lately, but I'm very familiar with him. Yes.
Right. He's had a huge audience. But I would like viewers to know, if they haven't listened to him, but also for yourself, as we were just saying, the Democrats want a full federal law to allow abortion. And this is their progressive, if not Marxist, could be more of an authoritarian thing, a federal law, federal. So
that's totally authoritarian. I mean, again, the whole premise behind the 10th Amendment was that the founders didn't want the federal government to become authoritarian. That's the whole premise of it. It's
but
funny.
But also, this is the point, is that in our founding documents, life, liberty, property, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, life. They protected it. As soon as those founding fathers, I
Sure.
know some of them had slaves, but there was plenty of people who were abolitionists all the way from 1776 to
Correct.
1862 when we
Correct.
had the Civil War, stuff like that.
Correct. Yeah.
And that is exactly what I'm getting at, is that they called the slaves property. It was the 10th Amendment that allowed that. So they had the Civil War, and they had, I guess, the 13th Amendment that said that, people cannot be property. It was literally, I think, the Dred Scott case, people escaping, slaves escaping, and then they had to be sent back to the States because they were property. And I think the 13th Amendment, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but
No,
I
that's
think that
correct.
made it so that
Correct.
slaves were no longer property and that they are humans. They have
Correct.
lives. So this
That's
Tim
correct.
Pool podcast, he's saying a lot of people can, well, let's put it this way. The narrative that he's saying is that if life begins at 8 weeks, if life begins at 12 weeks, if these beings inside of the women are alive, just like how slaves were alive, and they're
Mhm.
not property, because people think they're just fetuses. There's clumps of cell that they're parasites, that they're inside of a woman's body, and that it's the woman's body. So
Mhm.
they're just renting, property.
Sure.
It's almost the same as the slavery issue. It's not quite, but
Sure.
if anybody's interested, you could go watch Tim
I'll
Pool.
definitely check it out. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Sure. And we'll finish up right now. And if there's any final thoughts, or if you have any questions for me, and also tell people where they can find your show.
Sure. Folks, you can check out Real Talk by going to jerseyfirst.org/TV. Not only can you check out Real Talk with Fernando Uribe there, but you can check out the Nader Narrative, which premieres on Thursdays on YouTube, as well as Bridging the Gap, hosted by AJ Malillo and Steve Rambolo. Certainly, Elizabeth Nader hosts the Nader Narrative. You can check me out on Monday nights at 6 or 7 p.m. Once again, jerseyfirst.org/TV. Also check out Real Talk on Facebook, and of course also on YouTube, and as well as on LinkedIn. And again, Ryan, listen, I want to thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it, and keep up the good work, man. And keep making noise, as I'll keep making noise, and let's keep raising hell in 2024.
Thanks, man. You're a professional. Thanks for joining.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good night. Thank you.